Hi guys, Marcia here with qith Style, and I'm so excited to bring you my fall 2025 Knowme pattern ME2140. This is a shirt dress pattern with a corseted detail, collar, pockets on the side, and a view with the pockets on the front. And when I tell you that I love this pattern, I've already made it 4 times, and this tutorial will be my 5th. For this tutorial, I will be doing a couple edits and adding a couple of things to the pattern. So any of the things that you don't want to do, you can omit and just follow along as needed. And without further ado, grab your pattern, grab your materials, and let's get started. So for this tutorial, I'm creating view A with the pockets and the stand-up collar. This pattern does not call for boning, but I will be adding it in the corset seams. So if you don't want the boning, you can just ignore that part. I'll also be adding epaulets to the shoulder using the epaulet pattern piece from my Knowme pattern ME2020. You can also skip that part if you like. I will link the pattern ME2020 down below if you like to grab it and add the epaulets. Otherwise, make sure to cut out all of your pattern pieces, add all your interfacing and notches and markings. You can refer to your pattern instructions for suggestions on cutting layouts and pattern markings. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. First, we're going to take piece 3 and piece 4, which is our lower front and our lower side front, and with right sides together and raw edges even, we're going to pin piece 3 and 4 together along the side front edge or clip. Once you get those clipped or pinned together, you're going to take it to the machine and stitch it. I went ahead and pressed my seams open. Even if you are not adding boning to the corset, go ahead and press it open just to set in that seam. And then what you're going to do is you're going to actually press the seam toward the lower side front. This is if you are not adding boning, and then you will top stitch the lower side front 1/4 from the seam. But if you are adding the boning like I am, go ahead and press those open, and I actually turn mine under to make it a little neater. And I'm going to go ahead and measure out my bias tape, because I will be putting my boning in bias tape. So I'm just going to cut it just a little bit shorter than the actual corset seam. And then I'm going to measure, I'm going to put that aside, and then I'll measure 5/8 and mark it here, because that's where I will be cutting. That's where I'll be cutting my boning. So 5/8 from the bottom of the seam, so that when you sew this together, it doesn't sew over your boning. Sometimes it can make it hard to turn under your seams when you have the boning in the way. So I have my boning here, and I'm going to go ahead and measure from the top to the bottom and cut it at the 5/8. So you see, I don't have it all the way to the top. I have cut it 5/8 from the top and 5/8 from the bottom. But we're going to go ahead and take that bias tape, and we're going to close this tape at the opening, and we're just going to feed the boning through the tape. Make sure that your boning is inside the casing and not sticking out. That's why we cut it just a little bit longer. And I'm going to press this so that it's not bending. So that's how I'll be making the other pieces of boning and encasing them in the bias tape. Okay, so now I'm going to take my boning and I'm gonna pin it. Now I'm going to take this to the machine and I'm going to stitch through the edges here and through the edges on the other side and attach my boning to my seam. Once the boning is attached and you stitched it, you have your top stitches here done and your boning is in and it's nice and neat. I'm going to go ahead and do this for the other side of the front corset, and moving forward as I do the corset, I won't show the process of me making the boning, but I will be adding it into my seams as we go. Okay, so I'm going to skip around a little different from the instructions, and I'm actually going to go ahead and finish all of my corset pieces first. So I'm taking piece 12 and 13, and 12 is the lower back and 13 is your lower side back, and we're going to bring those two pieces together with right sides together and raw edges even. We are going to match those notches, those double notches, and clip or pin along the edge. We're going to go ahead and take that to the machine and stitch it up the same way that we did the piece 3 and 4 for the front, and like we did for the front. If you do not choose to put the boning in, go ahead and follow the instructions that would be on the actual pattern, and you're just going to stitch it down the side, and then you're going to press it to the lower back side, and then which is piece number 13, and then you're going to stitch about 1/4 from the actual seam. But I'm going to go ahead and do it with the boning, so go ahead and do it the way you like, and we'll come back and we'll continue the rest of the sew along. Okay, so once you finish with the back corset piece, and go ahead and connect the middle pieces and put the boning in the middle of the corset. This is the back piece. We're just going to set that aside and we'll get back to it momentarily. Go ahead and grab your middle front piece. This is piece number 2. It's like the bralette piece of the corset, and what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make the darts on those. You should have marked your dots for your dart, and you can pin or clip, whatever works best for you. I like to pin my darts if I need to, because I can stick the pin straight through the actual dot and into the dot behind it. So that's my little marker there. So you're folding the right sides together to make the dart, and you should have that split there. Line up those edges, line up the dots, and the middle dot should be in your crease here. And I'm going to pin that just to mark it. And then we'll take it to the machine and we'll stitch it 5/8 of an inch seam allowance there on that, and taper it down to this dot here. And we're not going to back stitch. We're actually going to pull that thread and make a knot so that it doesn't pucker. Okay, so once you completed your dart, go ahead and press the seam open to set in the actual stitches, and then you're going to press the seam down. So I've already finished this one, and I will be using bias tape on some of my seams along with folding them in, tucking them in to make it look neat. You can use a serger or you can finish it the way you like. I will not be adding that step in here because everybody likes to finish it their own different way. I'm going to go ahead and finish the seam on this piece too, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so now that those pieces number 2 are finished, we're going to go ahead and grab our front corset piece, and you should already have those put together. And with right sides together and raw edges even, you're going to pin the upper edge of the lower front to the lower edge of the middle front, which is that piece 2 which we just finished, matching the notches and the dots. And we're going to go ahead and pin those together. Once you have those pinned, you can take it to the machine and stitch it. Go ahead and press the seam up towards piece 2, and you are going to top stitch the middle front a 1/4 from the seam. And that's what I went ahead and do. Of course, I turned under my seam and then I top stitched it on the other side. We're going to grab piece 1, which is our upper front, and we're going to put the right sides together, matching the notches and the dots and the raw edges, and we're going to pin and clip it. All right, so now we're going to take this to the machine and we're going to stitch a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Stitch 1/4 of an inch from the seam and go ahead and give it a press. And we're going to set this aside and grab piece number 9, which is our pockets. First, what we're going to do is we're going to press under. We're going to press under a 1/4 of an inch from the edge, top edge, on both of these pieces. So just like that. And then once you've pressed it like that, you're going to turn it over and you should have dots. You're going to fold it over along the dotted line and give it another press. This is to create our facing for our pockets. I'm just going to pin it or clip it on both sides, and then we'll take it to the machine and we'll stitch along the seam line on the raw edges here, and we'll stitch all the way around. Okay, so I've already clipped the ends of my pockets, and I also serged the ends of both pockets, and we're just going to turn the corners right side out. You can use a pencil or some sort of tool. I like to use my pressing tool here to get the corners. It also has a sharp edge for the corners. And then you're going to take it to your ironing board and press the top down and along the edges and the corners up. And it will look like this once you're done. Next, you're going to take your pocket and you're going to stitch the facing close to the folded edge. Now we're going to grab our piece 5, which is our skirt front, and you should have made markings. I don't know if you can see it here, but I have them in white markings for your pocket. So for this tutorial, I will be doing the pockets, as you know, and we've already got our 2 pockets ready. So we're going to pin the pockets to the front, matching up the dots in the corners of those pockets. I'm going to pin it. You should have 2 sets of dots. One is for your pocket flap, and the bottom one is for your actual pockets. So we're going to match those large dots with the corners, and go ahead and pin your pocket to the front. All right, so now those are pinned. We can take those to the machine and stitch them close to the side and lower edges, about 1/4 of an inch away from the folded edge, if you can see it here, about 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so now grab your flap, which is piece 10, and you should have one side of the flap interfaced and one side not interfaced, and with right sides together we're going to pin and then stitch the flap on the side corners and all the way around, leaving the top end open. We're gonna start the dot, back stitch, before I go ahead and add these to my pockets on my skirt, I wanted to show you how I add the little tab that goes onto the flap. I like to add these whenever I'm making cargo pockets or use a military type look. I think it adds a nice little touch. So all I did was I cut a 3.5 by 6 inch piece, interfaced half of it, folded it over, and stitched one short end and then down the side and turned it right side out and top stitched it. So I went ahead and finished the end of it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add it to the middle, and I'm actually going to go over that top stitching so that it's permanently on the flap. So I just wanted to show you that because I am adding those to my flap on my pocket. All right, so now we're gonna pin our flap to our front skirt, piece 5, and we're gonna put right sides together, lining up the dots in that basting line, and I'm gonna pin it in place. All right, so and then we're going to take it to the machine and stitch along that basting line, and then we'll fold it over, press it, and top stitch it 1/4 of an inch. Now I take it to the machine and top stitch it 1/4 of an inch from the upper edge. We're going to move on to our skirt front and side pocket. So we're going to grab piece number 6, and with right sides together and raw edges even, we're going to pin the pocket facing, matching up the raw edges, the notches, and the dots. Go ahead and pin it. and we're going to stitch along the upper side front notched edges, reinforcing the seam in the inner small dot here. We're going to go ahead and clip, making sure not to clip through those stitches, and then we'll fold the pocket over, turning the pocket facing to the inside. Once you get it like you want it, you can take it to the ironing board and give it a press. Give this seam here a press on the outside, and then we'll top stitch it from the finished edge. All right, so now we're going to take piece 7, which is our side front and pocket, and on the inside of the skirt where you already put the lining, with right sides together, we're going to pin the side front pocket to the facing with the raw edges even and the notches matching. And you want to make sure when we take this to the machine to stitch it that you only are stitching the facing and the side front. All right, so we're going to take this to the machine and give it a stitch around the perimeter of the pocket. Make sure you go ahead and base the pocket to the skirt on the side, and we're going to take the skirt to the machine and we're going to edge stitch on the front to the dot, and then while we're there we'll go ahead and reinforce this dot here at this corner by stitching about an inch on each side of it and then making a clip. Grab the bodice and we're going to match up those dots and raw edges and notches. We're going to take it to the machine and we're going to stitch around the edge here 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, making sure to pivot at the dot where we've made that clip, very important. And then we'll do this to both sides. Once you have your top bodice connected to your skirt, you're going to go ahead and press that seam up just like that, and we're going to set the front piece aside. Go ahead and grab your back skirt and your back bodice, which we already put together, or your back corset piece. We're going to take our skirt pieces and go ahead and put right sides together. Matching those back notches. And we're going to go ahead and finish the seam on this back skirt so that we can attach our bodice or our corset. Use a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and stitch down the length of the back skirt. Don't forget to go in and reinforce the dots before you add the back corset to the back skirt. We're going to go ahead and line those dots up and those raw edges and notches and take it to the machine and give it a stitch. we're going to grab piece 11, which is our upper back, and we're going to connect the seams on the back, upper back. So with right sides together and notches matching, go ahead and pin or clip that back seam together. And then we'll take it to the machine and we'll stitch 5/8 of an inch down that edge. Go ahead and press the seam, middle seam open, and finish the seam. We're going to connect the upper back to the bottom half of the back. So with right sides together, you're going to take the bottom edge of your upper back and pin it to the upper edge of your corseted back, matching the notches and the raw edges. You can take it to the machine and stitch it 5/8 of an inch from the raw edge. Go ahead and press that seam down, and then we're going to grab our front pieces, and if you haven't already, make sure you stay stitched the neck of the front piece and the back neck of the back piece. And we're going to put right sides together for the front and the back and match up the notches and raw edges and pin the shoulder seam together. Do that on both sides, and once that's done, you can take it to the machine and stitch 5/8 of an inch seam allowance at the shoulder. Okay, now let's install our zipper. You're going to need a 22-inch invisible zipper for this project. If it's shorter, that's no good. If it's longer, you can always cut it. And you're going to need your zipper foot for your machine. All right, so first, let's open the zipper up. And you can press the tape on the wrong side. I'm going to go ahead and press the tape on the wrong side to get it nice and open and easier to apply. So for this part, I'm going to need my pins. And on the outside, I'm going to pin one side of the zipper, and it's going to be face down on the left front. I'm going to make sure to match up at that dot. That's where you're going to put your stopper. Your stopper is going to go at that dot. And then I'm going to go ahead and pin this down, but I'm going to baste it before I actually attach it with the invisible zipper. Just going to baste it down, and also when we stitch it, that top, the extra that goes over the stopper, is going to be folded down and included in the seam. So let me just go ahead and do that now. Bring it all the way down to the bottom, right there at that notch. There is a notch down there where you're stopping. I'm going to go ahead and baste this on the machine, and then I'm going to do the other side the same way. Now we're going to use the zipper foot to attach the invisible zipper. Once you have your zipper in, go ahead and test it out. And make sure that all the seams match up. That is the most important thing, making sure your seams match up on your zipper. All right, so now that we've done that, let's go ahead and close up the remaining front seam. Okay, so to finish up the lower edge, the neck and the shoulder, we're gonna use our facing, which is piece 8, and I have gone ahead and finished the insides or the edge of it by turning it under. You can use bias tape or you can serge it if you like, but I turned mine under. So what you want to do now is open out the center edge of the dress, rolling the zipper teeth away from the center edge. And then you're going to match the necklines with the dots and the raw edges all the way up to the shoulder. Matching the notches. Go ahead and pin that all the way down. And actually, I'm gonna actually stop there because I wanna finish my edge off, and I'll probably finish it off with tape. We're only gonna stitch from the dot on the inner edge all the way down, leaving the neckline open. Go ahead and understitch from the top to the bottom of the front facing. So you're going to need piece 18, which is the stand-up collar band. This is for view A collar. You should have one piece interfaced and one piece uninterfaced. Okay, so I'm actually going to go ahead and just clip the band to the stay stitching on the neck. And then take your interfaced piece, and we're going to connect the interfaced piece from the bottom edge, connecting the dots and connecting the raw edges and the notches. Don't forget to match up the notches. And we're just going to pin it all the way around. You also have dots here that are going to line up with your shoulder seam, so pay attention to those. And I have marked the center of my collar to match the center of the back seam there. All right, so once you have that connected, go ahead, take it to the machine and stitch 5/8 of an inch from the seam allowance. Okay, so I went ahead and attached the collar, and I trimmed the collar seam and I pressed the collar seam up. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the unfaced collar here and we're going to go ahead and press under about 1/2 of an inch on the notched edge of the collar band. This edge of the collar band, we're going to press it up, turn up about 1/2 of an inch, and then I'll trim 1/4 of an inch of it off. Now with the right sides facing, go ahead and place your collar facing to your collar, matching the notches and the dots, lining up the raw edges. Go ahead and pin or clip all the way across. And stitch it 5/8 of an inch, seam allowance along the raw edges. You can go ahead and clip and trim and turn your collar right side out. I also went ahead and used a little hem tape to keep it in place. You're going to go ahead and either stitch in a ditch or do like an invisible stitch around the edges of the collar to sew it in place. There is one piece that I am adding to this garment that's not part of the pattern, and that's the epaulets. And I may have mentioned before, these are the epaulets from a previous Knowme pattern that I've created, and I'll put the link below if you want to grab it and add it. But if not, just skip this part, and I'm going to go ahead and create these and add them to the shoulders of my dress. Okay, so I've added my epaulets, and I even added the buttonholes and the actual buttons. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and close up our side seams and hem our garment. So I'm turning it wrong side out to expose those side seams, and let's go ahead up and line up the seams, the notches, any dots, most importantly those seams. So I'm going to actually start with matching up the corset seam, the bottom of the corset seam, and we're going to clip from the top all the way down to this little notch, or actually this little dot or big dot at the bottom. They should match up. Go ahead and fold under your hem 5/8 of an inch all the way around, and I've already done that. So next, in order for you to get the corners well, you're going to turn up the corners where the corners cross at the 5/8 of an inch fold, and you're going to turn up the corner. And when you turn up the corner, go ahead and press it, and then you're going to clip about 1/4 of an inch off of that corner. So this corner I've already turned up and pressed, and I'm going to clip it, and once that's clipped, you can go ahead and turn under your corners like this all the way around and stitch it. Let's go ahead and get started on this sleeve. We're going to add some ease stitches into the sleeve. We're going to put right sides together, and then we'll stitch 5/8 of an inch from the edge of the inside of the sleeve. Okay, so after you finish your sleeve, which is piece 15, adding your ease and stitching the seam together, finishing your seam, make sure you go ahead and stitch up 16, which is the lower sleeve part that makes the lantern, and this is actually going to be connected to the bottom of the top sleeve, which is 15. We're going to match up the seams and go ahead and put the right sides together, match up the seams and notches, and go ahead and pin the top edge of the bottom to the lower edge of the top. Then take it to the machine and stitch 5/8 of a seam allowance. Go ahead and press those seams apart, finish them, and I have top stitched them already. And then we're going to actually move on to the sleeve binding. The sleeve binding, which is piece number 17. You should have 2 of these. And what we're going to do is go ahead and stitch the ends of the sleeve binding together. So put right sides together, matching the notches in the raw edges. And we're going to go ahead and stitch the edge of this and press the seam apart, and then we'll come back and attach it to the sleeve. I went ahead and turned under the unnotched edge 3/8 of an inch from the raw edge, and now we're going to attach it to the sleeve. Take your sleeve and go ahead and attach the notched edge of the binding to the lower edge of the sleeve, matching up the notch on the sleeve to the notch on the binding. Go ahead and pin or clip it together, and then after you get it completely pinned, you can take it to the machine and stitch it. Okay, so after you've attached it, you're going to go ahead and trim your seam. I went ahead and pressed it towards the binding, pressing the binding down. Now we're going to take that edge and we're going to fold it up. And we're going to pin and press it, and then we'll stitch in the ditch to lock it in place. After your binding is set and it's on, you're going to take your sleeve and we're going to set it inside and attach our sleeve to our garments. Alright, so here's my sleeve. I'm going to set it inside, matching the notches and the dots and the seams. Go ahead and take it to the machine and stitch it around the raw edges 5/8 of an inch from the seam allowance. ME2140 is now complete. For more sewing tips and styling ideas, follow me on IG at qith Styles.